go ahead and get started. Again, we're going to record this and we'll get started and share this with everyone. So with that, Jen?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us for our second session in our ACI HR series, Hot Topics and How to Initiate Change. And for those of you that we have not met, I'm Jen Galt, Education Program Manager for ACI.
And I'm Erica Schweigman, Associate Director of Membership and Operations for ACI. Before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone to please remain muted throughout the program, and we encourage you to keep your cameras on. Feel free to use the chat feature at the bottom to thank our speaker, ask questions, and meet other participants. If you haven't done so already, please select speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. As a reminder, this program will be recorded and placed on the ACI YouTube channel through the end of May.
Thanks, Erica. Now that housekeeping is complete, we are here because with the ever-changing economy and regulations, we found that our members are seeking information on best practices, updated guidelines, effective retention programs, and much more. So this series was born to offer you just that. And each month we're coming to you with information on relevant topics from our wonderful members and subject matter experts.
Wonderful. And we are honored that you have chosen ACI as your HR resource today and look forward to working with you each month. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to your presenter for today's session. Excuse me, Miss Martha Fulci with Rehab. Martha has been a longtime supporter of ACI and our members. She is dedicated to taking care of each company and their employees. You have probably seen her around multiple events, maybe even in a helicopter to golf outing. But today, Martha will be talking about how to make an informed decision to select an MCO. Welcome, Martha.
Thank you very much, Erica and Jen. I truly appreciate the opportunity. So yes, I'm with Rehab. We are celebrating over 25 years of excellent service to our customer base throughout Ohio. We're an official managed care organization, which is a shoot off of the Bureau of Workers' Comp. And we are the preferred MCO of Allied Construction Industries, and we are feel very privileged that they have chosen us to do that and have been for so many years. The best injury is the one that doesn't happen. You know, we really don't want our people injured, even though we have to take care of them. And yeah, we make money because we are taking care of them, but we really don't want our people injured. We want to think safety. And what I'm going to talk about today are some information about injuries. What I did is I took injuries from all of last year and the first 3 months of this year. And I kind of looked at them, and we're going to talk about those injuries and how we can maybe prevent them from happening. And then also we're going to look at the expense when those injuries do happen, how much they cost you, and how we as a Rehab, as a managed care organization, can save and do cost containment in regards to the management that we have. The first portion of each slide is going to be in reference to our injuries. It's going to be what kind of injuries were created by what type of problems. So we're going to look at that, and then maybe you keep your thinking cap on as to what you can do in your own field of expertise, and then what you can do from what I suggest or food for thought that I'm giving you, that maybe you can do something to eliminate these injuries from happening. Then the second thing is we're going to look at the expense of those injuries. The first thing is going to be the ODG, which is what the official disability guidelines, that is a national standard that is used to manage claims as to the appropriateness of care and that type of thing. And we're only looking at injuries that are basic injuries today, and what those costs are for basic injuries. We're not getting into any kind of severe injuries. It's not including the time off work, the surgeries that may be involved, or PTD claims. That all adds to the claim, but there's enough to talk about just when the claims start. So we're trying to eliminate those and to kind of show you what that expense is when an injury does occur. And then Rehab, we are ranked high in the medical cost containment. And that is due to our aggressive physician claim management. We are the only MCO that has doctors who do the case management. So we have orthopedic, chiropractic, occupational med, internal med, and psychiatry physicians. that look at every request from care from the treating physician. And they look at what's going on with the injured worker and make a determination, is the care appropriate or not appropriate? And because of the aggressiveness of our doctors and knowing what's appropriate and not appropriate, it can maintain and keep the costs down, which obviously protects your bottom line and your premiums being paid to the Bureau of Workers' Comp. So the first one, well, as I said, I looked at 3,966 claims. So this is in the order of how the injuries were produced from those injuries. So the first one was equipment. 1,219 injuries were created from equipment. The first one was the finger, hand, and shoulder, which had 673 injuries, or 55% of those injuries were affecting the finger, hand, and shoulder. The next one is 39% for the ankle, leg, and foot for 469 injuries, and then eye and face, 77 injuries. The figures may not equal up to the top figure, just for the fact that I only put in the higher ones. There's a lot of little stragglers, so they may not add up, but these are the major things that are affected by these type of injuries. And these equipment contacts is basically a lot of different things. It's where the equipment is broken, where people aren't telling management that something is broken and they just deal with it. So consequently, a door slams and hits them and they get injured, or something pops out. A spring doesn't work and something pops out and hits them. So there's a lot of equipment that's not kept up to snuff that is causing injuries because they're using this equipment that's not appropriate and not correct to be used because they're not, it's not safe. The thing that really surprised me, and you can see with it being one of the highest one is hand, people are still putting their hands in moving equipment. I mean, that was something when I started in this business 100 years ago, people were doing that. And, you know, you have lockout, tag out, and all those procedures and management, you know, informing people about that. But that is still happening. People are still putting their hands in equipment that is still moving, trying to release something. And obviously they cut off a finger or cut off a tip of a finger or a hand or whatever, because they're just putting their hand in a piece of moving equipment. So it's a very serious injury and it's a very serious problem, and people just continue to do that. So consequently, that is something that you really need to be aware of, and you really need people to kind of engage each other, you know, the buddy system, say, hey, John, what are you doing? Don't put your hand in there. Do the tag out, lockout. You shouldn't be doing that. Turn the machine off. Do what you need to do. And they're just not thinking. And I think a lot of it too, you know, being that it was 20 through this beginning of this year, we had COVID. So people weren't working every day. So they weren't thinking, and maybe they needed to be re-educated on the operation of the machine. So consequently, they were injuring themselves because they didn't know how to work the equipment as well, because they forgot, because they weren't doing it on a daily basis. So, you know, it may be a good idea to retrain people, even though they may have done it for, you know, numerous years, but they're back in the workforce now. And they may need a refresher course to how to operate the machine, to make sure that they are closing this gauge or closing this door and looking at this gauge and using the equipment appropriately. And it's very important. You know, the other thing is wearing long sleeves. I was amazed at this one, that people wearing long sleeves and it's getting caught in the equipment and pulling their arm into the equipment. Had a couple people that had long hair, and their long hair got caught in the equipment and drug them into the equipment, and consequently had abrasions on their head and things like that. I would never have thought of that, quite honestly, but it does happen. So, you know, you really kind of need to look at the whole scope and say, hey, what can we do to make sure that these people go home safely? The eye and face basically is that people are opening doors they shouldn't be opening, and things are coming back into their face from what's inside the apparatus. Or like I said, springs are flying doors open and hitting them in the face. So again, equipment is very important that you keep it keep it operable, keep it well conditioned to make sure that people aren't getting injured by that. A lot of people walk into equipment. They get injured because they just walk into the equipment. I don't know how they cannot see it, but they don't. They just walk into the equipment and hurt themselves because they don't see that piece of machinery. So, you know, that might be an idea that you want to put tape around, big yellow tape around the equipment to kind of give them an eyesight as they're walking, that they're getting close to the equipment so they know they need to stay outside of that barrier line. But just some food for thought to think about that equipment and what your equipment is and what you can maybe do to make sure that that equipment is kept safe and your people aren't injured due to the equipment that you have. Now, if you look down at the bottom, the official disability guidelines, okay, for the finger, their normal fee, they say, is $518 for the, like I said, this is just your basic injury, no big deal. And the ankle is $3,317. Well, with rehab's management, with our doctors, we're able to contain that cost because our doctors are aggressive at looking at what's appropriate for the injury and that type of thing. And as you can see down at the bottom, and this disclaimer is on everything, this is from data from October of 18 through March of 21. These claims still may be seeking activity, medical expense. However, and that may go up a little bit, but this is where it stands right now. And there is no compensation that is reflected in this. This is strictly medical. But as you can see with our doctors' involvement, we're keeping the expense down from what the ODG thinks it should cost and what the national average is for these type of injuries that have created here. So it's just something that, you know, we really pride ourselves on in regards to our physician case management. So that was the first one, which is your equipment contact. The next one, which I thought was going to be number one. Every time I was doing this, it's like, okay, they're tripping, they're slipping, and they're falling. And it's like, wow. So needless to say, it's the second one. It's 42% is your ankles, your legs, your feet. 34% is your shoulder, your arm, and your hand, which is actually equaled out to 228. Your head is 70 and your back is 95. So consequently, those are the things, the body parts that are being injured from that 680 injuries that we dealt with last year and the beginning of this year. This has been created a lot from ice. Ice is a big one. You know, people are falling in the parking lots. People are falling on water where people just really do not pay attention to their surroundings. They spill something and they don't go and clean it up. And then somebody comes along and down they go. Well, you know, it's costing you big bucks because people aren't watching out to see what is appropriately needs to be cleaned up or whatever. The other thing is people that are outside, they're not maybe paying attention to their terrain and they're falling into ruts, they're falling into holes and twisting ankles and hurting their backs and things like that because they're not paying attention to what they should be paying attention to. So again, it's an awareness that they need to be aware of their surroundings and they need to be safety conscious as far as it's not just for their safety, it's for everybody's safety, that when you spill something, you need to take care of it and clean it up. And then, you know, when it does snow and there is ice out there, that you need to have your maintenance people take care of that so you don't have people come in and falling and hurting themselves for you to have to pay the big bucks to take care of them for whatever length of time until they're healed. So that's real important. The other thing that is another prevalent thing is they're tripping over things on the floor. People will put boxes on the floor, you know, just off their desk onto the floor and people aren't paying attention and they just fall over the box on the floor or the skid that's maybe closer than it needs to be and they trip on the skid. So you need to really look at what your workspace is and make sure that people aren't putting things on the floor for people not to expect that there's something there and trip on it and hurt themselves. The other thing is tripping on mats. People put mats down to help with the trip, slips, and falls, and then they end up tripping over the mat. I'm going to show you this next slide, which, and we'll come back to this one, is there's a company called Shoes for Crews. And we had Skyline Chili, and they did a study with the Bureau. They got a grant, And they had 10 different things that they chose to try to eliminate their slips, trips, and falls at Skyline Chili. And they had a special solution that was made by P&G, which turned out to be the worst thing they could have done. They put mats down and everybody was tripping over mats. And they found Shoes for Crews. And Shoes for Crews eliminated their trips, slips, and falls completely. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And this company, they will guarantee, if you become into their program, that they'll guarantee up to $5,000 per slip if you're in their shoes and you slip and get a workers' comp injury, which is pretty darn good. So this is some information. They have 60-day satisfaction guarantee. They have discounts. They have styles, so people aren't, saying, oh, they're not cool looking or whatever. And they really are a top company to help with cutting down on slips and falls because you're not slipping in their shoes. And the phone number here is at the bottom if you want to contact them. So it's a really good way to eliminate those type of things. And then when you got those shoes, take up the mats. You don't need those anymore because they're not going to be slipping. So now they don't trip on those mats because that's what happened to Skyline. The lady said to me, like, Martha, now they're tripping on the mats. It's like, well, they have the shoes, take up the mats. It's like, oh yeah, that's an idea. So she took those up and that eliminated the issue. So it's just something to look at to see if that would work for you. But they do have steel-toed shoes. They have a special kind of bonding thing on the bottom of their shoe that protects from the person from slipping and falling. So it's just an option. Now, looking at the expense side of it, you look at the ankle, $3,317. You have a shoulder, $2,217, a back, $2,122, and a head, $259. Now, these are just the beginning of an injury. I mean, who knows, is that ankle going to need to have surgery, or the shoulder or the back? Are they going to need surgery or physical therapy or whatever? And that's just going to drive that cost up. So that's your bottom line. That's going to cost you because you're not looking out for the injured worker, well, not injured, looking out for that worker to make sure that they're not getting injured because of trips, slips, and falls and that kind of stuff. Now, if you look down below, you'll see how aggressive our doctors have done. The difference between the ODG and what we've been able to do with our physicians to manage that expense. So the ankle is considerably less along with everything else. 1,359, 1,126, 983, 217. That all mounts up. So consequently, our doctors are doing an aggressive job to help the employers that we represent to keep their expense down on one of the bigger things that they have going on, which is the slips, trips, and falls. Okay, the next one is your bending, lifting, and pushing. This is one of those situations where people think they're stronger than they really are. They want to lift a piece of machinery by themselves rather than asking for assistance. And they're trying to lift boxes. They're trying to do things that they shouldn't be doing because they aren't strong enough and they're not thinking, and they maybe not using their legs appropriately or their back appropriately to bend appropriately to be able to move that piece of equipment or that box or whatever there is to move. So consequently, you need to look at what you can do. I mean, there's grants through the Bureau of Workers' Comp that you can maybe get in a piece of equipment to help assist in the moving of apparatuses you may have in your environment that need to be moved on a regular basis. So, those are the things that are created with issues from the back to the shoulder to the arm and elbow. They're just putting too much strain on those body parts. And you as an employer need to look at that to make sure that, you have the equipment available, you have the additional personnel to help and empower your people to ask for help rather than to think, oh, I got to do it by myself. No, it isn't by yourself. It's a team effort. We need to do things as a team to do that. You might want to think about warm-up exercises. We have a company, we have more than one. We have a few companies that they do warm-up exercises in the morning to get their people moving and moving around to warm up their bodies. It's a machine, so they warm up the body so they're able to go and do something without getting hurt because their body's ready to do the functions that it has to do. The other thing is you know, basically, you know, like I said, get assistance, you know, get assistance. Don't think they have to do it by themselves. And that's part of your environment, that you have to empower the people to know that they can ask for assistance in those type of things. So here again, you're looking at the disability guidelines. Your back is $2,100, your shoulders $2,200, and your hand is $1,000. You take it down to the management by 3HAB, $983, shoulder $1,126, and hand $567. Again, aggressive management in dealing with those issues. Lose control. This is basically box cutters. I mean, box cutters are really evil. It's really bad. I mean, they slip and they cut their hand, they cut their wrist, they cut their ankle, they cut their leg. It's just really amazing how many are caused by box cutters. And maybe when you have to open, or when they're doing a sheath on a wire, that's another thing. They lose control and the sheath comes down and it cuts them. You know, maybe when they're dealing with having to have a box cutter or do something with a sheath or something that you know is going to be maybe a slip out of the hand, is that they're wearing gloves. Make sure that it doesn't slip to cut them. So as you can see, 71 are your fingers, hands, wrist. It's that box cutter getting you. And the ankle and leg, a lot of that too is dropping things, so that they have something in their hand and all of a sudden they just drop it and it ends up on their foot or on their ankle or leg. So again, I believe that some type of shoe would help, along with something on their hands, to make sure that those things don't slip out of their hands. And when it does hit their ankle and their leg and stuff, it is protected because they have protected shoes, they have long pants on, and those type of things to be able to protect them. Here again, you have the disability where a hand is $1,059, the ankle's $3,300. Our management with 3HAB is cut in half with the hand, and it's more than half with the ankle for our physicians. So it's an aggressive management tool through that. The next one is involvement with other people. This one, we deal a lot with schools with children with disabilities, and then we have a lot of nursing homes. So I realize that this doesn't pertain so much to the people in the construction, but on some note, it really does. Horseplay is a big thing that happens where people are just trying to have fun and throwing this and throwing that, and, you know, just having fun or hitting somebody with something, and causes injuries. Quite honestly, it's not in the statistics, but a few years ago, we had somebody that the guys were playing, the guy threw a shirt, he went to go after his shirt, he fell, he ended up dying from horseplay. So, you know, work isn't a place for horseplay. And so you need to really monitor and make sure that the guys are keeping on, guys and gals, are keeping, you know, on focus of their job, making sure that horseplay is not happening and that people aren't getting injured. The other thing is you know, there's a lot of fights that happen between people that cause injuries because they don't like each other. If you know there's a personality conflict between two people, you want to keep those two people away from each other. You don't want the fight to break out on the work spot and you have to pay for the injury because that person decided to knock them out or whatever. So it's real important that you are aware and have your finger on the pulse in regards to how people respond to each other, if they're friends or not friends, and if they're not friends, to keep them apart so you don't have those type of things. And of course, you always have the disciplinary situation to go down to, but you want to eliminate any type of injury due to them getting into a fight. Again, you look at the difference, you look at the hand, 1,000, where the hand for 3HAB was half of that. Shoulder was 22, shoulder for us was half of that almost. The head was 259, and then 217, not quite as much, but still a savings. So, you know, just be aware and the aggressive management. Exposure basically comes in, again, a lot into nursing homes. The finger stick, they're putting the cap back on their syringe and they miss the cap and hits their finger. So they get exposed to whatever the scenario is. When you look at the lung, that's basically COVID. We've had a lot of COVID cases that were contracted at work. And that's where you need to be aware, are you doing the necessary things for the COVID guidelines and that type of stuff, because it can become a workers' comp injury if they can show connection to the situation where you're working and this person contracts COVID. So you need to be aware of that. The other one is basically the chemicals and gases being released from your work site or your equipment, and consequently coming back onto that person, that's affecting their eyes and infecting their lungs and that type of thing. So it's real important that you have them wear their protective glasses and any kind of breathing apparatuses when they're dealing with chemicals and things like that, so they're not going to have any kind of long-term lung infections affected from the chemicals and things like that you work with. And that's real important, because those are things, quite honestly, that can come back years after the person no longer is even working. It can come back as an occupational disease if they get something and they can prove that it happened at work. It can become a workers' comp claim. Now, it may be out of your experience and you're not going to have to pay anything on it, but it's still the quality of life for the employee, and you want that person to have a good quality life. So it's not just short term, it's long term also, and it's important to keep our people healthy. Here you're looking at the hand again, where it's half the price in regards to the management of that between the guidelines and 3HAB. Animal contact, again, it's just one of those that's, it's a big one. I don't think you may have a lot being in the type of industries you may be, but maybe you do. 82 are from animals. So if you are having people that are in transport and delivering things, that you may want to have some kind of a spray or something to ward off any kind of dog attacking them, because that's the big thing. It's a dog coming out and attacking them. You also have the insect bites and things like that when you're working out in the environment. Make sure that you're wearing long sleeves and long pants, and making sure that you're protecting your body parts so you don't have those bites and those situations that come from the animals biting you and that type of thing. Because an animal bite can be very serious, because it's worse than a human bite. So you really have to be careful with that. So just an awareness there. Maintenance. This is kind of crazy. It's like people will put broken glass or syringes or other sharp objects into containers that people aren't aware of, that the containers have these objects in there. So consequently, they go to pick it up to put it in their truck or into the garbage or into whatever. And consequently, they get cut or stabbed or whatever because of that. Or maybe they put stuff into a box and then the box falls out and the stuff in the box falls out and hits them in the foot and the ankle, because somebody wasn't thinking that, this has to be dealt with by somebody else. So it's real important that you think the maintenance, keep up the maintenance of your equipment. So many times the equipment is broken and they're putting duct tape or wiring something back together. And so consequently, the person is dealing with it and they're cutting themselves on that broken handle that should be replaced, but they're not doing anything about it. So you want to think about, what can we do to make sure that people think about the other person? You may know the glass is in that container or that box, but the other person doesn't, or it's too heavy and the bottom falls out. It leads to injuries, as you can see, 74 injuries, and hands and fingers. You can put them out of work for a while to not being able to do their job because their fingers are not operable or whatever. They can't walk because their foot's hurt. because of somebody not doing due diligence and taking care of and thinking of that other person. So, maintenance is important. Empower your people to do that maintenance, and look at that equipment. Have your supervisors look at the equipment that's being used every day. It's not just, the big equipment, it's the hammers, as the handle on tight. We had one guy that the top of the hammer flew off and hit him in the head, and hit his eye. So, things like that you just need to be aware of. So, again, you can see the hand and the versus 3HAB and the ankle versus 3HAB management, the disability. Safety equipment, just kind of like the same thing. People putting their hand into something, they're not wearing their safety glasses. I mean, I know people train to wear safety glasses, but if they don't enforce it, it's not doing you any good. And that's what's happened. I was kind of funny as I'm reading through the Freud's. It's like, well, I got this in my eye, and after I did it, I put my safety glasses on. It's like, well, that's good. You should have done it, probably 2 hours earlier. You're lucky. It's only now that it's happening. But safety glasses, you gotta make sure that your people are wearing safety glasses. An eye is a terrible thing to lose. And if you want these people going home, and to put on a pair of safety glasses really is not that difficult. I know it's a bothersome. It's kind of like wearing a mask. I understand, but you want people to be able to see their grandchildren and to be able to live their life, being able to see the beauty of this world, and you need to wear safety glasses. The other things for safety is, basically, again, using the cutting gloves when they have to sheath something, or they're using their box cutters or working with equipment. You want to make sure that they're using those type of things that are available. The other thing too is to have the steel toe shoes. There's a lot of things that people do not use steel toe shoes or the proper type of shoes, and things fall on their feet and consequently get injured. So, like I said, you can tell them one day, but one day is not going to make it. You have to enforce it, and you have to make sure they do it. And over time, it'll become a habit that they do put on their safety equipment, because you're making them adhere to the rules and regulations. And it's only going to save them, even if they may, not like it, it's still going to be to their benefit. So the face, you have 259, 3HAB is 217, hand 1,059, 567, ankle 3,317, 139. Repetition motion, that's a big one where, people are doing the same job over and over and over again. And I understand, that the job needs to get done, but you need to think outside the box and be able to think about maybe, training the people to interchange their jobs. And it really is to the benefit of the company also, for the fact that, you have the cross training. So if you need to get something done, Joe knows how to do it, and you can take him off the line to go do this line to get the job done. And it also, and the big thing is, it saves on the repetition of the motion. 33 claims of repetitive motion over the last year and 3 months. That's a lot. So, and it affects the shoulders, it affects the back. So, and that, like I said, this is only the beginning of claims. If you continue to have that person do that same job with that repetitive motion, it's just going to cause more and more herniated disc or whatever, thoracic discs or whatever. It's still going to make it worse. Or, you might have to have a rotator cuff repair, which is going to drive the cost up. So you really have to think, how can I make sure that these people have different motions that they're using rather than the same one over and over and over again to save these people's body parts and be able to save on your bottom line. As you can see, the shoulder is 2217, 3HAB is 1,126, the back 2,100. 3HAB was 983, so a savings there. Vehicle accidents, you don't know, you can't tell when somebody's going to get hit by somebody in a car or whatever. So this is more of an awareness. So we had 129 injuries, 98 were car and truck, and 31 were forklift. the 31 forklift, that's a training thing. So you really need to train people to make sure that they're not running into people and injuring themselves, injuring those people or themselves because they don't know how to work the apparatus. So it's real important to train your people and continually to make sure that they're doing the right things. And again, being away with COVID, they may need a refresher course on how to operate a forklift so you can eliminate having so many injuries due to forklifts. Cars, again, that is something you can't always predict in any way, shape, or form. But the Bureau did come up with something here that you do have a situation where if you are in good standing with the Bureau and you have your payments made to the Bureau and you're good standing, and the person does get into a car accident and is caused by a third party who has a claim that's had a citation given to them because of them running into your person, you can file an AC-28, and you can do this through your third-party administrator, or you can do it yourself. And so consequently, this will come out of the surplus fund, which is a fund that does not affect your premiums. It's a fund that's over here that the Bureau has to help employers with different things in a claim. But this will come out of the surplus fund and not affect your bottom line when it comes to workers' comp. A lot of people don't know about this. You have to make sure that you have the citation and all that kind of good stuff. But if you have that, you can file it and the Bureau will take it on to the surplus fund and save your premiums. This is another one, just FYI, we had 14 injuries as active nature. So be aware of the weather, make sure, you don't send people out into inclement weather and, because things can happen. If you're driving in heavy rain, you could have a car accident or trees could falling and things like that. The wind can cause a lot of problems for people when they're trying to walk and push them and hurt them and things like that. And of course, as we talked before, the freezing rain and ice that really contributes to the slips, trips, and falls. So just be aware, and what can we do to eliminate people going out into this type of weather? And if they do, are they prepared to be able to take care of themselves so they don't get injured? Unknown. This one kind of blows my mind. I mean, this is on the floor. I hurt myself. I have a back injury. How did you do it? I don't know. I was just hurt. It's like 135 people didn't know how they got injured. I mean, you should have in your toolbox, so to speak. First of all, if it's not a true emergency where the person has to go to the emergency room because they're bleeding or severe injury or whatever, and they have to be taken in a squad or taken care of immediately, you should stop and say, hey, okay, what happened? And do an accident report. I mean, just basic. You can do it deeper once they get back, but just a basic, while it's fresh on their mind, what they were doing, how they were doing it, and that type of thing. So you have that to be able to identify what the issue is and maybe fix it so other people don't get injured, and know and make it fresh in that person's mind what they were doing when they were injured. I mean, the big thing is they need to report to their supervisor, and it should be in your policy. Whenever they get injured, they come to their supervisor and say, hey, I got injured, and an accident report is completed. And it doesn't have to be this one. It can be, anyone that you have, but you need to do an accident report, internal accident report, to identify what the heck happened and what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again. And then the other thing too is you want to do a witness statement. Who saw the accident, who didn't see the accident, but was in the area when it occurred, is just as important, because then you're able to make a determination, was this really a workers' compensation injury or not? If nobody saw the injury and he's saying he was injured and nobody sees it and everything, it just doesn't make sense, you can not certify the claim. And so consequently, the Bureau will look at that a lot more closely because you start certifying it and you're investigating it in your work site to determine if it is something that he did playing baseball yesterday or he really did hurt himself on the job. But the bottom line is when they come to fill out this first report of injury, which is what the MCO has to submit to the Bureau of Workers' Comp, we can say, this is what happened, and this is the body part that was injured. As you can see, the description and the type of injury. And that goes to the Bureau for them to make their assessment with the medical that we obtain to see if it all pieces together and that type of thing, rather than unknown. Because an unknown, the Bureau will put it on hold, and that person may need medical care and they can't get their claim allowed because they don't have a reason why the person was injured. Was it really workers' comp? So you really need to do due diligence. The same thing where that yellow line is the injured worker needs to sign the form. If the injured worker does not sign the first report of injury form, the Bureau will not deal with the claim. They won't recognize it whatsoever. It'll just sit there. So it's very important that they sign that form stating that everything up top is something that they agree with and that it is a workers' compensation claim. And then the Bureau has the right to make their determination if it truly is going to be a claim or not. And then you, the employer, can certify or reject it down at the bottom due to your witness statements and your investigation. Is this something that truly did happen here on the job or not? So nothing should go in as an unknown is the bottom line on that one. Okay, the next thing is accommodations. I mean, accommodations is very important. Rehab is high ranking in getting releases for the injured worker to return to work in some capacity. But all our hard work is worthless if the company does not bring that person back within the restrictions of the treating physician. So it's very important that you accommodate people, bring them back into the workplace, and work with them in some capacity within their restrictions. There's a transitional work program out there. A lot of companies have it. It was paid for by the Bureau about 10 years ago or so. And a lot of companies have transitional work programs, which basically has different jobs that are available to bring people back into that helps them with them not having to think about, oh, gee, what's transitional work? What jobs do I have? They can go to their book and see what was identified as jobs that they could utilize when somebody couldn't come back full duty. Again, you have to keep within the restrictions, but those were in that program. If you don't have a formalized transitional program now, the Bureau is bringing the program back where they will pay for the development of a transitional program for employers at no cost to the employer. That's supposed to happen here in June. And they'll have developers that'll be able to come out and work with you and look at your work site, look at your jobs, and determine what is transitional work. Think outside of the box, help you to identify jobs that maybe you need to get done that aren't getting done because you don't have the time, but because this person is not able to do their regular job, they can do it being on transitional work. They have to get up in the morning, they have to come in and do the job, and consequently, it's a win-win. You're getting the job done, they're getting reconditioned to come back into the work site rather than getting deconditioned, sitting home doing nothing. So it's real important to bring those people back with the restrictions, make sure that they're with the restrictions, they work within those restrictions, both at home and at work. And it's a win-win for everybody, the whole system in that aspect of it. This form is a very important form. When you bring a person back in transitional work, you want to sit down with that individual and you want to say where it says temporary restrictions, you can even say see attached. And you can attach the Medco 14, which is what the doctor writes up for the injury and what the person's able to do, no lifting, no standing, no pushing, no whatever. You can say just see attached. But the bottom part is the important part, that transitional work assignment. That's where you're going to identify what that person's going to do, what time frame they're going to do it, because they may work 6 to 3, but you don't have work from 6 to 3. You have it from 9 to 5. And in transitional work, you can change their work time. So you're going to say what you're going to work and what duties you're going to do that are within your restrictions, and they need to sign off on it. And that's where it's down at the bottom. If that employee says to you and say, hey, I'm not going to do that. You hired me to be a forklift operator. I'm not coming in here to do your paperwork. I'm not doing it. Well, this is when you send this form to your third-party administrator, or you send it to the bureau if you don't have a third party, and say, hey, I offered this gentleman or woman this job within the restrictions, and they were refusing to do it. So consequently, with that scenario, they're not going to get paid for sitting at home doing nothing because they don't want to do the job that you're offering them, even though it's within their restrictions. So that saves on your premium rather than them getting paid to do nothing. And every time their restrictions are lifted, maybe they can only lift 5 pounds initially, now they can lift 10 pounds. This form needs to be completed each time those restrictions are lifted to the full-time capabilities. And you do the same thing each time. This is, okay, now you can lift 10 pounds. This is what you're going to do. And they sign it. If they don't sign it, just what I said, report it. And they don't get paid. So you might have 5 or 6 or 7 of these in their workers' compensation file, which is fine. That's what you need to have, because if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And then on the same note, during this time, you're paying this person to do the job, and you're paying them their normal salary, even though they may be doing something that's less than what they really get paid for. You still have to pay them their normal salary within that transitional work program. So that's very important. With the transitional work program, they also have the bonus program. The bonus program is where you can get money back because you're accommodating those injured workers to come back into the workplace. And with the collaboration of our doctors and our one-point contact and everything, we've been able to help our employers receive hundreds of thousands of dollars back. 1 year alone, our companies received close to $300,000 back, different companies, for bringing them back into the workplace. So they really pay you to bring them back. You get paid because the premium's not going up, and you get paid because you're doing the right thing, bringing them back into the workplace. So, and we help to make sure that there's one form that has to be completed that goes to the bureau saying, okay, they did accommodate, and then the bureau will then pay you that money for being aggressive and getting that person back into the workplace. The next thing is you get a one-point contact with rehab. You only have the doctors who do a great job, as you can tell, with all the management and the medical management and that type of thing. We were ranked highest overall in 2021 by BWC's report card for employer satisfaction. And these are just some things that our employers sent back to me and told me about rehab and how wonderful we were and that type of thing. We are very service oriented. We give you a one-point contact. They're the ones that are going to help you, that are going to deal with your third-party administrator. They're going to deal with your injured worker, deal with you, the company, keep you up to snuff as to what's going on, along with the TPA. At any time, if you want to talk to our doctor, you can ask for that, and the doctor can talk to you and help you understand what you're looking at in regards to an injury, or what can you expect for surgery, or whatever the scenario is. You always have that resource also. So communication is a very strong part of the rehab, along with the excellent managed care from our doctors and that type of thing. So other than that, is there any questions about anything?
Martha, I have a couple of things. So I know, and you may have covered this, so I apologize if I missed it, but being that you are ACI's preferred MCO, I know you and I have had some really great conversations about rehab and how it kind of came to be. And I always love hearing about rehab specifically in what sets you apart from other MCOs, and the idea, because a lot of people ask us, well, you have a different preferred TPA from an MCO. So from that standpoint, why is it beneficial to go with an MCO that is not the same as company as your TPA?
Okay, I think you said the difference between an MCO and a TPA. I kind of lost you there.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm having internet issues today.
This is the last questions you said.
Yeah, so Jen, are you able to jump in and help out with those questions if my computer's freezing?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So was it the TPA and the MCO?
No, so with you guys, what sets you apart as an MCO from other MCOs, and why is it beneficial to go with an MCO that is not connected to your TPA? Because ACI obviously has two different companies for an MCO and one for the TPA. Why is it beneficial to go with one that may not necessarily be with the same TPA?
Those are very, very good questions. Very good questions. Okay. The thing that separates 3Hab apart from any MCO is we actually were doing MCO work prior to the mandate by BWC. 3Hab was actually started by Freiberg Orthopedic Group. They used to be the oldest orthopedic group in the nation until they went under about 6 years ago or so, go back to work. And the employer said, no, we're not going to do that. If they can't come back full duty, we don't want them. So consequently, myself and Dr. Greenfield started the company and we beat the pavement. We had about 150 employers that we worked with, and we would get people in to see doctors within 24 hours and physical therapy within 24 hours. And consequently put them on the fast track. The only thing is the employer had to commit that they would bring the person back into workplace with transitional work or light duty, which is what it was called at that time. When the man MCO was like, well, this is a no-brainer. We couldn't direct the injured worker to go to the physicians. So consequently, we brought the physicians to the managed care organization. We are and have been for the last 27 years, been the only MCO that has doctors who do the case management. All the other MCOs have either nurses or lay people making medical decisions. And they're using the ODG guidelines, which as you could have seen, where their benchmarks were compared to our benchmarks, are a lot more savings because of our doctors' aggressive management. Our doctors know, they're treating physicians, they know how things go together in regards to claim advancement as far as how injured workers should be feeling, what should be coming next as far as care and those type of things. And then when they see those requests coming in from the injured workers treating physician and they're not accurate, then they'll call the treating physician. When you have a doctor calling another doctor, they'll usually take the phone call because it's a common courtesy. And secondly, they can talk pretty much, turkey about what's going on and say, hey, why can't you, or why don't you think of doing this? Or, why don't you release this person to go back to work? Why can't he do sedentary work? Why can't he do one-handed work rather than taking him off work? And when you have two doctors that are kind of talking the same lingo, you can help them to understand the importance and they'll change their minds. Oh yeah, he can go back one-handed, he can go back sedentary. So it just makes for a better outcome because of our doctors' involvement. And they're talking to the injured worker if it gets to be a serious case to understand where they are and where the process is in their healing, and maybe again what they need to say to the doctor as far as what the next appropriate care should be and that type of thing. The other thing is in cost control is that there's a time frame and also the ODG that things can be done in the beginning of a claim where it makes no difference if it's really appropriate or not. It can be done and it can be paid for by the Bureau of Workers' Comp because it's in that pre-sump or according to ODG, it may be appropriate. Well, in all reality, okay, let's take for instance, a guy cuts his finger and he goes in and he has a chest x-ray. There's no need to have a chest x-ray for a finger. So consequently, our doctors will look at that and they'll deny it and say, no, the chest x-ray was not appropriate. It did not go with what happened to this injured worker. There was no connection whatsoever. And so we control the cost because the doctors will deny it versus in saying, oh yeah, it's part of ODG. They think it's appropriate. We'll go ahead and approve it. No, it's not appropriate. So we keep the costs down because of that. Your second question was the difference between 3Hab and other MCOs. We are the only standalone MCO when it comes to not having. basically what that means is that the third-party administrator is the legal side of the system. And they're charged with looking at the MCO to determine that what we are doing is appropriate for that injured worker. And if we're doing something that, approving something or not allowing something, they send and say, hey, you should have been doing this, that, or the next thing. Well, it's real hard to have the same company be objective for the same company. You need somebody that's going to be looking at it from a different point of view and say, wait a minute, this isn't appropriate. And they have that objectivity rather than ownership of the same company and don't want to make them look bad because they're not doing maybe what they should be doing and that type of thing. So there needs to be a separation between the two companies in our mindsets, because they need to look over our shoulders, make sure that we're doing it right, and say that we're not doing it right. There is an appeal process that we have to go through, and we send it out to a third party who looks at all the information and determines, did we do it right or did we not do it right? And then we go from there in regards to the care. But you need a new set of eyes rather than the same ownership looking up because it's their company that owns it. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, that answers both of my questions.
Awesome. Well, the only other next step, I guess, is, if you'd like to join 3HAB, it would be as easy as filling out this form. Erica is going to send out this PowerPoint to everyone. So all you have to do, it has to be a real signature on that employer contact line. Just sign your name, fill out your policy number and your company's name, send that to me, and then I will get you signed up with 3HAB. Basically, transmission of all the files and everything will happen during the month of June, and we'll take over the management on June 28th. And then it is a 2-year time frame that you are with a managed care organization. It's that simple. And we would love to have you. We'll send out welcome packets, and we'll send out injury cards and those type of things that your employees would be able to identify who their MCO is to the provider that they go to, make it easy for a transition. Well, we have a portal. We have a great portal that gives you real-time information in regard to what's going on with the claim. It also does reports for you that you can do what the expenses are in regards to a certain claim. The big thing is it does the OSHA log. It pulls in all the information that we have on a claim into an OSHA log that you're able to critique and complete what you need to complete. And then if you're working with temporary people and they need to go on your OSHA log, you can also add that, even though we may not be doing the management. It just basically gives you a starting point. So many employers have spreadsheets that they keep track of. Well, this all pulls in and they just have to update what you have to update, what we may not have, fill it in, and then it can be uploaded to OSHA come next year, and you're ready to rock. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to think, well, was that person workers' comp or not? It's already there. So it just really saves a lot of legwork and a lot of extra work for an employer because of our portal and how good it is. You can bounce back and forth into the Bureau's website to look at the medical, because we don't keep medical on it, to see if you want to look at the medical, and then can drop you back into the portal. You can email your one-point contact if you have a question about something with the claim, and she can email you back, which will come back into your regular email. It's really quite slick. So it's really, employers have really found it to be quite beneficial and very helpful in report making, and especially the OSHA log. So if you have any questions or, would like to talk to me about being one of our clients, you can always give me a call. This is my number and my extension, my email. You can fill out the form and send it to me if you feel like you have enough information. We'd love to have you. And I think you would appreciate the level of service that we bring to the table for you. Any other questions about anything? Oh,
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity that ACI has given me and your time today. I appreciate your taking the time to listen to me. And you guys all stay dry and have a wonderful day. What's left of it.
Thank you, Martha.